What is up with these? Is this just what the 70s and 80s were like? You were just like, hey, stranger, come live in my house.
It was a simpler time. It was a better time.
Welcome back to another episode of The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the next episode of Taxi. Now, if you're enjoying these episodes, or if you're just a fan of Taxi and enjoy consuming content about it, please consider subscribing and or following. Like the episodes, and comment or email your questions and suggestions also. Please also consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page at patreon.com/TheRankPodcast. Now, today we're ranking the 5th episode of the 2nd season of Taxi, titled Wherefore Art Thou, Bobby, which was written by Barry Kemp and directed by James Burrows. The series is 45 years old, so I'm not going to worry about spoilers. Now, as I continue my goal to find out what the best sitcom of all time is by watching/rewatching and ranking all the episodes, let's dive into this episode of Taxi, starting with the potent notables. So this 27th episode of Taxi was supposedly released on Tuesday, October 16th, 1979. So this was a weird one. Everything I look up tells me that this episode was released on October 16th, 1979. However, October 16th, 1979 was also Game 6 of the World Series, and it was being aired on ABC. So how could Taxi have been aired during the World Series on the same channel? Taxi's on ABC, Game 6 of the World Series is on ABC, same night. I don't see how that's possible. I don't know if I'm experiencing the Mandela effect or what. I will say that Game 6 and 7 of the World Series won the ratings for that week. So a lot of people saw the Pirates beat the Orioles in 7 games. What's interesting about this week, though, is that Game 6 and 7 and their respective pre-games were the only things that made the top 15 for ABC. So as we've been experiencing for the past few episodes of Taxi here, it seems like ABC might be losing its juggernaut status. Maybe it's starting to become up for grabs. Now, the next and last potent notable is for our taxi cab enthusiasts out there. During the run of the series, the cabs used by the Sunshine Cab Company were the classic checkered cabs that were manufactured by the Checkered Cab Company of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now, the Checkered Company was a car manufacturer who primarily built custom-made cabs designed for heavy use and high mileage on New York streets, although several of their models were available for sale for regular non-cab customers. The design in use in the 1970s and 80s had changed very little since its introduction in the 1950s, giving the cabs their classic look. Despite this, however, several establishing and transition scenes in the series would show the other dominant cab model on the road in New York at the time, the 1968 Dodge Coronet. The 1970s saw a trend of cab companies beginning to use regular model cars in taxi service instead of the custom-built cabs by the Checkered Company, as they would have been much easier to service. This would lead to Checkered ceasing cab production in 1982. Many of the Checkered cabs, due to their sturdy construction, however, would survive into the 1990s, although by that time, the Chevy Caprice, introduced in the early 1980s, was the most dominant model used in cab service. So that is your potent notable there. Real fun cab potent notable for you.
Fun.
Let's go into the episode overview. We start off with a continued bit with Bobby asking if he has messages and giving Louie $1 to receive it. I actually like this recurring bit. I enjoy that they keep it within the show. The message, though, is that Bobby booked a commercial, and for some reason, he's upset about this. Alex's reaction to it is correct. He's basically like, you should be happy. This means you're getting work as an actor. But Bobby's like, no, I want more. You know, I'm Bobby.
Maybe no accent.
And it's a Bobby episode. Just tough. Now, Laka comes back in right after that, and they double down on the bit about, they have to pay for messages and everything. I was just singing its praises, right? I'm like, watching, I'm like, that's cool that they bring that back every once in a while. And then it sort of got annoying because they were like, hey, you know the rule, you gotta pay me, and blah, blah. I'm like, I get it, right? Back then, people couldn't stream the show. They couldn't know the continuity if they hadn't watched all the other episodes. But they'd get the gist, right? He paid him $1 for the message. I don't know that we needed to do that. Anyway, whatever. But I will say, anytime Laka is on screen, you have a good opportunity that there might be something funny that's going to happen. In this case, they get me back with like a really good dad joke here, because Laka is going to be like, hey, here's this. It's a whatever. He makes up a name for it. And he's like, oh, if you have 237 of those, then you get this made up name for currency. And then Louis like, well, what's that? And he's like, well, if you get 130 of those, then you have a Amada. And then Louis like, what's Amada? Laka goes, nothing. What's the matter you? Which is great. It's a great joke.
Is it?
You take what you can get. I was happy. Now, for some reason, we go from this to an introduction of Steve Jensen.
Who?
Now, if you're like, who the fuck's Steve Jensen? Me too. He's walking in with Tony because Tony just met him at a bus station, it sounds like. Anyway, the guy wants to be an actor, so Tony introduces him to Bobby, who tells him to just give up. So we're starting pretty heavy here. And Bobby's is being kind of a Debbie Downer, but still ends up taking Steve Jensen under his wing for some reason. Again, this is a person they've all just met, to the point that he's letting Steve stay at his place? What is up with these? Is this just what the 70s and 80s were like? You were just like, hey, stranger, come live in my house.
It was a simpler time. It was a better time.
You know, maybe it was. That's just not anything that I would be doing. But anyway, what consistently works with this show, though, is Locke. Every time he's on screen, I get hopeful for a laugh. And he doesn't disappoint in the beginning of this episode. He seemingly gives Bobby a gift of goat droppings for his commercial. And Bobby's like, is this like a sign of good luck in your country? And Locke is like, no. Like, well, why'd you give it to me? Because I didn't want it. And again, this is very dad joke territory here, but it's working for me. I'm enjoying some Locke here. Now, of course, what ends up happening is that Steve Jensen, again, random character, he gets a job right away. He books a gig right away. And Louis is very excited at the prospect of telling Bobby the news, but Alex and Elaine and Tony are all conspiring to keep him from doing just that because they don't want to hurt Bobby's feelings. Right. They think he won't be able to take it. And we get this over-the-top scene where they're physically keeping Louis from getting to the phone. And I'm not saying it's over the top in like a bad way. It's fine. It didn't make me laugh, but I could see it making people laugh. So it wasn't like poorly done. I think the problem for me is just that I just don't give a shit about Bobby. And I think it's really kind of pathetic that they would be so worried about his fragile ego because this guy he just met got a job. The kid gloves that they handle Bobby with is just really frustrating. Is he really that insecure? It's pretty pathetic. He actually seems like he's going to be a real person for a second when he does finally find out the news. But of course, he lives up to everyone's super low expectations. Don't worry. Not only does he not handle his brand new friend's success, but he's going to quit acting because of his raging insecurity. So all of this happens and, they're going to try to bring him back. Right? And Alex's idea to bring him back into his love of acting is to have Steve run lines with him because Steve, by the way, the gig that Steve got was to play Romeo in Romeo and Juliet. So they're going to do Shakespeare on Taxi, classic sitcom stuff. Anyway, we get treated to what an amazing actor Bobby is once again by having him read lines with Steve. Now, I don't know if you're counting and keeping track here, but this is the third episode where they've had this exact same storyline. I want to be an actor. I don't want to be an actor anymore. I'm going to still be an actor because I'm Bobby. Anyway, I hope in like 13 episodes we get another one. That'd be great.
Was that sarcasm?
I hope we just keep repeating this plot line because you can tell I really liked it. Now, of course, Bobby doesn't quit, as described, and we get another crazy long monologue, which, if this is your first time coming to this, we've talked about this a lot with Taxi, where they just go on these long monologues, and you're like, in one episode, they had a Dear John letter that was like 2 pages long, and then they read the whole fucking letter. Why? They're just trying to fill time, I guess? I don't know. I just want to be like, this is a comedy. You guys know this is a comedy. Could you write some jokes? Maybe? Anyway, the whole monologue is about how Louis' vitriol towards Bobby is what has convinced him to keep on going. Thanks, Louis. Guess that means we might get another one of these plots in a later episode. All right, well, I think you got a pretty good idea where this is headed, but let's do the rank anyway.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Then I add the laugh counter, which is where I tally the amount of times that the episode made me laugh. So 1 point per laugh out loud, and that gets added to the cumulative ranking. The first category is story. So story I gave a 3.25, and I know we just went through this, like, kind of went on a little tirade about how sick of this story I was. However, the story, in and of itself, it's not a bad story. It's just, you've already done it 2 other times. I don't need it 3 times in 2 seasons. And so for that reason, I refuse to give it a high score. Normally, I might have been a little bit more generous. I think I was definitely more generous on the second episode, but now that we've had 3, we're not doing that. I still don't think it's a bad story, though. I'm just annoyed they keep going back. So the next category is acting, which I gave it 3.5. Now it's an episode about acting, where the acting was good. I mean, it was fine, but there's only so many times I can watch Bobby mope about his non-career in acting. Yeah, I got big hair. Anyway, so next category is dialogue. Dialogue, I gave a 2.25, another non-funny episode with too many long monologues. There was literally only one laugh that wasn't Latka in it. So if it wasn't for Latka, the show would be mostly unwatchable. And it's hilarious because Andy Kaufman, who plays Latka, didn't even want to be on the show. So I feel like that should say something. Let's go to the next category, which is episode coherence, which I gave a 4. What can I say? The bad episode cohered. Bobby being a shitty, unwatchable character cohered with the rest of the series of him being a shitty, unwatchable character. Okay, that's not really fair. He's been enjoyable in other episodes. It's just the first time they did this plot, actually, I enjoyed it. I actually have it as the best episode of the series. Episode 4 of season 1, which is called Bobby's Acting Career. And now I just can't stand this plot line. The second time they did it was episode 18 of season 1, Bobby's Big Break, which ended up in the rank and regret it tier. So I think you might be able to see where this one's headed, but curious if we're headed down the same hole or if it's going to be a disaster piece. It's certainly not going to be the Holy Grail. So let's go to the last category, which is character relatability, which I gave a 3.5. It's not entirely unrelatable, but it's annoying. Can I understand someone being jealous in this scenario? Yes. That doesn't mean I think it would make good television, though. So those are the rankings. Let's give you the laugh counter. It did get me 6 times, so better than none, which is funny to say because 5 of those times were Latka. That's basically the only time he was even on screen. The other one was Tony. Tony did something. I do like Tony Danza. I think he's funny in this. So there you have it. It's a grand total of 22.5, which amazingly puts it directly below Bobby's Big Break. So maybe they'll do another episode with this same exact plot line and we can see if it ends up even lower. As you can probably imagine, this episode falls right into the rank it and regret it tier. So as for the series average, this episode actually pushed the series to 24.92. The average of every episode for this series has put it into the rank it and regret it tier. So thanks for listening and or watching, everyone. If you'd like to see a list of our episode and series rankings, you can do that on our website at therankwithjohnandzach.com. Remember to subscribe, review, and comment, and please consider supporting us on our Patreon site at patreon.com/therank podcast, where you get exclusive perks. I'll leave you with this. Why isn't Bobby getting more acting jobs?
Why is that?
Because he sucks.
Do you know we can see you from here?
Sorry, Antonio.